Final hours are upon us before the 2022-23 NFL season playoffs begin. I am Matt Parrino. He is Ryan Talbot. This is Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. Right now, you can enter for a chance to win $1 million. I've been telling you guys this all season. I hope you've all been entering weekly because Kings Hawaiian is pitting two city sliders against each other in the ultimate showdown every week, and you get to help decide the winner. Vote weekly for your favorite regional slider for a chance to win all season long and earn entries towards the $1 million prize. Explore the interactive stadium, play games, get recipes, share photos, and more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone to enter. We're going to preview Bills Dolphins. On this episode, we have another guest this week, Mike Sando from The Athletic, bringing a little bit of a national perspective. And then we'll, of course, finish up with our keys to the game, our prediction as well. How are you, Ryan?
Hey, I'm doing great. Excited for some playoff football this weekend. It's the best time of the year in the NFL.
Ryan is going to be in Buffalo for a second consecutive weekend. We're going to cover two football games. This is the first time since I started that we're going to be covering home games back-to-back weeks together, in person, live at Highmark Stadium. I'm jazzed, man.
Yeah, so am I. Excited to be there. Playoff atmosphere, big game against a division rival. You name it, it's going to be a great time at Highmark Stadium.
Eric Wizowski, sorry if I'm butchering your name, says, can you change your Wingnuts event? Because he's going to be in town next weekend. And unfortunately, we already got that one locked in, my man. But listen, Eric, get over to Wingnuts anyway. It's an awesome time. Try those wings. They are next level. The beers on tap are so quality. They're bringing out new ones all the time. I've been there twice, and I've tried two different ones that I'd never had before, and they blew me away. So head on over there. All right, Ryan, where I want to start on this game, we're going to try to power preview this thing over the next 15 minutes before Mike gets in. We'll obviously finish up with some more Bills-Dolphins stuff at the end. I want to talk a little Bills-Dolphins with Mike, but I want to go big picture with him. What's the path to a victory for the Dolphins? They're very banged up on both sides of the ball. Even guys that have been practicing a little bit this week, aren't healthy. I mean, Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Terron Armstead, different, variations of level of health. But guys that are banged up going in this game, and for Armstead in particular, even if he plays, it's not going to be what you expect at your starting Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. What has to happen for rookie 7th-round draft pick quarterback Skylar Thompson to lead the Dolphins to a win?
Josh Allen's car must not start, and he must have no cell service. That's the only thing I can see, man. I'm sorry. I don't see a path to victory for the Dolphins. And yes, stranger things have happened. There's been big upsets in the playoffs. Unless the Bills simply implode in this game, I don't see a path to victory for Miami. It would have to be multiple turnovers on offense, deep in their own end, making potential easy scores for Miami's offense, whether it's field goals or touchdowns. Any given Sunday league, I understand it. I get it. They're not just a one-man team, but you saw the way that offense has looked, even with Tua down the stretch. It hasn't looked the same. They had to squeak out an 11-6 victory in the final week of the season just to get into the playoffs. We know what Josh Allen can do against this defense. I don't see that path. What about you?
So I don't see it either, and it stays in line with what you're talking about with Josh. I mean, we saw this movie last season, didn't we? Like a division rival, an upstart, after the Bills were getting most of the, headlines early in the season. The Patriots went on that great winning streak. They came to Buffalo, the win game, right? Like Mac Jones didn't even have to really throw the ball in that game, and they beat the Bills. And everybody was kind of flipping the script on that national Buffalo narrative. And then all of a sudden, Josh Allen went into just superhero mode and just absolutely destroyed the Patriots in the next two games. Go back a couple weeks ago. Josh Allen still on the tail end of that elbow injury, dealing with some of the things that come along with that, was unstoppable, Ryan. 10 carries, 77 yards in that game. He threw it 40 times, completed 25 of his passes, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, that's perfect football, right?
Yeah.
That's unstoppable football. And I do like some of the components of this Dolphins defense. And I do think on their defensive line, you throw in Jalen Phillips, who I thought played a pretty decent game against them last time. Christian Wilkins, who is a real terror force in the inside, and he can, I don't want to say wreck a game, but he can definitely complicate things. He had a forced fumble last time. Josh Allen spread the ball around in that game. He had touchdown passes to Quentin Morris, Nyheim Hines, James Cook, Dawson Knox. Stephon Diggs didn't even really get that much involved in the party. And I'm sure he's probably feeling some type of way about being only a second-team All-Pro selection. These guys use anything to motivate them, and rightfully so. Stephon Diggs has been, in my opinion, one of the 3 best wide receivers in the AFC in the NFL this season, but it is what it is. The 3 guys ahead of him were also really good. He set a career mark, by the way, Stephon Diggs, in touchdowns, 11 receiving touchdowns this season, and it set a franchise record previously held by Billy Brooks. I just think offensively, right? Like, I'm taking Skylar Thompson out of the mix completely. Maybe they figure out a way to be more of an effective, balanced offense and not rely so heavily on the run game, which, by the way, I think the Bills want them to rely heavily on the running game. That's part of, I think, that bend but don't break mentality. I just think there's too many ways for the Bills to win offensively in this game, in this stadium, in this spot.
Yeah. You said it. That last game, Josh Allen threw 4 touchdown passes, and I still don't think he was right in that game with his elbow. And I don't know what percentage it's at or where he's at, but you saw him uncork 2 deep balls last game effortlessly. The 50-yard one in the air to Stephon Diggs, the 42-yard touchdown pass to John Brown. You don't make those types of passes with the ease that you do if your elbow's not getting better, if you're not getting healthier. We know how he can use his legs. Yes, Miami has some guys on that defense. Jalen Phillips, you mentioned. Christian Wilkins has really taken his game to the next level, and you mentioned that already. But he may be the primary focus on that defense for me if I'm the Bills in terms of game planning, making sure that he can't wreak havoc. Bradley Chubb's status up in the air a little bit for this one, but they do have some guys. So maybe they get after Allen. Maybe they can force some turnovers and make it closer than it should be. But it's just so tough to sit there and say, okay, this 7th round pick, Skylar Thompson, how he's going to come in here after leading the team to 11 points last week against the Jets and somehow be able to play Josh Allen, which you would have to essentially do. And I know they're not truly going head to head, but he would have to have the game of all games. And I've seen some Dolphins beat guys trying to, I don't want to say hype him up, but kind of
name names, Ryan. Name names.
I think it was Joe Shad who said, "Hey, he's played in
he's got a Tua jersey underneath his shirt at all times." Let's be honest about Shad. What's funny is I've read Shad for a long time, but man, this season has been just enlightening how much of a homer he is, but it is what it is.
He said something along the lines of Skylar Thompson has played in the cold and wind in his career, in his college career, and he's defeated the likes of Iowa State and Texas Tech. And I'm like, that's not exactly Alabama and Georgia. If you're trying to prove a point of being the best of the best in college football in cold weather or windy conditions, the Bills defense, I think, will be slightly better than both of those opponents come Sunday afternoon. So, I don't want to play this off as just some easy win, but I just see Buffalo winning this game and winning comfortably when all is said and done.
We got some breaking news, Ryan. Let's get into this right away. We're going to get into the Bills side of things. Pretty clean injury sheet. Obviously, Isaiah McKenzie, Jordan Phillips haven't practiced the last 2 days. They are both listed as questionable. We'll talk about what both of those things can mean if either of those guys don't play. But I want to spend some more time on the Dolphins injury report. Tua obviously already ruled out earlier this week. Raheem Mostert dealing with that thumb injury. He has been ruled out. Interior offensive lineman Liam Eichenberg, doubtful. Starting tackles, Brandon Shell and Teron Armstead, questionable. They are just absolutely beat up on offense. That's literally 5 starters right there that are in jeopardy of not playing in this game. And I just think that you want to talk about having to overcome adversity. This is like Mount Everest of adversity falling on the face of the Dolphins. And in a lot of ways, it does kind of feel like, I did watch some of the back and forth between the fan bases earlier displaying like what it was like down on the field level. I did pregame down there. It was 11 o'clock. It wasn't even mid-afternoon yet. And I had a towel, and in between takes, and we're talking about 2-minute hits, I was drenched. I was like, just imagine trying to play football in that. And the difference from that heat to the shade. I was trying to explain to people, it is real. They're not lying about why guys need IV bags who live in Florida. Isaiah McKenzie needed one at halftime. He lives the rest of the year when he's not in Buffalo in South Beach. So I try to explain that to them. They were having some fun with it. You could say maybe karma a little bit. I mean, it feels like that a little bit in this. It's almost like a complete role reversal.
Yeah, it is. And conditions look good for this game, weather conditions. But then in terms of the health, you said it. They're so banged up. Even, a guy like Tyreek Hill kind of suffered a minor injury last week against the Jets, limped off for a little bit. He'll be good to go. He'll play, no doubt about that. But across the board, this team is hurting on both sides of the ball. There should be some real advantageous matchups for Buffalo.
So on the Bills side of things, defensive line, Jeff Wilson's going to play in this game. They still have Ahmed, the running back, who I think at times over the last couple of years, Ahmad, or is it Ahmed? How do you pronounce his last name?
Selvin. I say Selvin Ahmad, but I could be wrong on that.
Ahmad, right. I've liked him at points. Even back when they had Matt Breida in there for a year, I thought that Ahmed was maybe the best runner that they had that year. So he's going to probably be in some kind of combination with Jeff Wilson, who they traded for, and they believe in quite a bit. And I think he looked pretty good. They're going to miss Mostert, though. There's no way around it. That running game was built around him. And, McDaniel's history with Mostert going back to San Francisco, he fits like a glove. I mean, you watched last week a Jets defense, which was so good against the run all season. They were just blocking it up, even with the being as banged up on the offensive line. Mostert runs hard. He gets downhill fast. He puts really good hits on tacklers, linebackers. They're going to miss him in this game. I don't know if that run game is even going to be the same, just relying on those two other guys.
Yeah, and he was averaging 8 yards per carry in that second matchup. And really one of the big reasons the Dolphins lost was they went away from him in crucial moments. Third down and short plays. They were throwing it with Tua, a lot of incompletions there that ended drives or short of the sticks. And they really could have stayed with what brought them to the party, and that being Mostert in that game. He is a huge loss for this team when you throw him and Tua into the equation. It's going to be tough for them to manufacture yards. The Bills could even, stack the box, really show that challenge Skylar Thompson to beat them. Thompson might utilize the tight end a little bit more, whether that's a Mike McDaniel thing or whether it was a Tua thing. So they still have some players on that offensive side of the ball, but I just don't think that Thompson puts much fear into that secondary linebacker core or defensive line for the Bills.
And what's funny is I look at Tyreek Hill's stat line from a couple weeks ago: 6 catches, 69 yards, a touchdown. That's 7.7 yard. Obviously, Jalen Waddle had a couple of big plays in that game, but the Tyreek Hill component's interesting because you take that piece with Tua in the game against this Bills defense, right? And now you put in Skylar Thompson. One of the big takeaways I have from watching, the games that he's played, he started 2 games. In those games, the Dolphins are 1 for 4 in the red zone. He really struggles to push the ball down the field. Obviously, he's not. There's no way. Like, Brock Purdy is a unicorn. Like, the 7th round draft picks coming off of the bench and orchestrating an offense the way that Purdy has. It's unseen in this league. I mean, you have to probably go back to see somebody doing it at the level of Purdy, probably to Tom Brady, right? Like a late round draft pick that gets an opportunity. So the big takeaway is, okay, if you're going to be working in that short and intermediate game, you're going to see Tyreek Hill probably get the ball in his hands, but teams that they've played the last couple of weeks, the 49ers, the Bills, the Jets, the Patriots, have done a good job of getting to him quickly, wrapping up tackling. Tackling is going to be a big piece of this. And at times this season, that's been a struggle for the Bills. But I think knowing that going into this game, they got to be dialed up in that part of the game.
Yeah, tackling will be one of the keys of the game, making sure that you bring the guys down after catching the ball, limit the yards after the catch. This is an opportunity for the Bills to exercise a true demon in Tyreek Hill, someone that has helped end their postseason the last 2 years in Kansas City. So to be able to kind of defeat him on their path to the, hopefully, in their opinion, obviously, or what they're trying to get is to the Super Bowl. And this would be that first step. Knock out Tyreek Hill, the player that has been able to defeat you and knock you out of the playoffs the last 2 years. Then you move on and you face whoever it would be next weekend. Obviously, the favorite matchup would be the Bengals, but it's going to be a tough path But to be able to take on a player that's ended their season the last 2 years and have a chance to knock him and his team out of the playoffs is huge for this team.
211 snaps for Skylar Thompson this season, just north of 200, maybe like 205, 202, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
5 turnovers and three interceptions, 2 fumbles. As he's trying to process so much, especially against a high-level defense like the Bills, which are probably going to try to really have an uptick in their level of disguising pre-snap. I know that a couple weeks ago, the Bengals talked about how simple the Bills' defense was, or basic. That was the term that he used. I would imagine if that's even the case, and I'd like to spend a little time with Leslie Frazier and get his take on that. But I think the Bills try to make things even more confusing, move things around a lot. Obviously, having Milano in this game, Jordan Poyer in this game, the Bills still haven't lost this season with Jordan Poyer in the lineup.
Yeah, listen, they have all, most of their best players. I can't say all, obviously. Micah Hyde now is someone that realistically could come back, maybe AFC Championship, Super Bowl type of range. But they have a lot of the guys that when they're not on the field, that they're prone to lose or prone to these defeats. But when you have Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds healthy at linebacker, you have Jordan Poyer back there at safety, Trey White improving each week, and a very healthy secondary in general. You like this matchup for the team. Up front, yes, Jordan Phillips is a little bit banged up right now, but you still have Ed Oliver. You still have DaQuan Jones. You have some young pass rushers that are going to have an opportunity to get to Skylar Thompson. Thompson holds the ball almost 3 seconds. It's going to be up to Greg Rousseau and company to get after him, lay those hits, try to create some turnovers, whether it's strip sacks, whether it's getting the hands up, batting passes. They're going to have opportunities in this game, especially against that offensive line you mentioned, Matt, that's pretty banged up for Miami, to get through and make plays for this team to help set up the offense in some good scenarios.
Jessica over on YouTube, regular in the chat, asks, who do you two see the Bills calling up in this practice squad? And I think that's right on the money. Brandon Bryant and John Brown with, they signed Cole Beasley to the active roster this week. So that obviously fills in that slot role if Isaiah McKenzie's not able to go. Bringing up John Brown just gives you another veteran player to make plays, and you have unlimited call-ups. So why not get John Brown, coming off of one of the most electrifying plays of the Bills offense has had all season, back in the mix here this week? I think that makes a lot of sense. And then Brandon Bryant's a guy that you can rely upon. He knows the system. He's been up for a bunch of big games over the last couple of years, filling in for certain guys. And knowing that you're going against Skylar Thompson, listen, I know that Jordan Phillips probably wants to play against the Dolphins, right? His former team. It makes a ton of sense to try to gut it out and give the team 15 to 25 snaps. But man, with that shoulder injury, you just want to continue to give it as much time to heal as possible, if that's even the case. Maybe he's going to need something done on that in the offseason, and time isn't necessarily going to be something that allows him to heal enough to where it matters enough the following week in the divisional round, but you got to get there too. So there's that kind of operation too, but they could call up Brandon Bryant and then still play Jordan Phillips on Sunday.
Yeah. And Jessica, you nailed it. Those would be the two that I would choose based on the injuries on this injury report. I don't really see a path for anyone else in terms of the way this team is built, the way they're healthy. If you were looking for maybe a dark horse, maybe a Kingsley Jonathan, but I think they're still 4 deep at defensive end. I thought Jonathan did some nice things in the game that he was called up for, but I don't see them taking one of their DNs like a Boogie Basham off the field for a Kingsley Jonathan. So I think the two that you mentioned, Brandon Bryant, John Brown, those two make the most sense.
Here's Brian Bowers over on YouTube. What's the word on Christian Benford for this game? He's up on the active roster. That was a roster move made, I think, either earlier this week or late last week. Tamar Hamlin going on injured reserve, and then Benford back on the 53. It's going to be difficult because I think this is the kind of game against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle where you want Kyer Elam in the mix, whether it be rotating with Dane Jackson. I know that Christian Benford's working his way back into the mix as well. Man, I'll tell you, that guy is just getting after it on the jugs machine, Ryan. I'm telling you, we opened locker room the other day at 2:15. I think it was yesterday, Thursday, and we get to be in there till about 3:15. And usually, guys, if you see a guy still out there at 2:30 taking some reps on the jugs machine, that's something. I'm telling you, it was 3:00. He was still out there doing it. So he's getting ramped back up, and I wouldn't be surprised if they want to get him some game action, especially if the Bills go up really big early, getting him into the mix. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for him to play. It was last week in the season finale. It was interesting. Right before inactives came out, Elena and I were talking about who's that last one going to be, and I said, "Oh, it might be Benford. I know he's just activated, but they need someone to kind of stay down, and they always have the same 3 or 4 players inactive. That might just not have been the time or the opportunity to get him in this game, but in this matchup, you said it. There might be opportunities to get him some playing time. If the Bills can kind of pull away a little bit, get him some reps that he's missed these past few weeks when he's been out with the injury. But in terms of significant playing time, I don't know if it'll be there for him because obviously Trey White is going to play a big role in this game. Kaiir Elam, I think, is a matchup you want to have him out there on the field with that speed and athleticism. Obviously, in the slot, you have Taron Johnson, and then Dane Jackson has played a big role for this team. So, yeah, there's a path for Benford to play on Sunday. I just don't know. I think they're going to limit his reps if he is up on and not inactive in this game.
Great stuff, Mr. Talbot. And our guest is in the green room. So let's bring him right in with no further ado. Mike Sando from The Athletic. How are you, Mike? Co-host of the Football GM podcast over on The Athletic with Randy Mueller. You guys do a great job over there. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good to be here today. How are you?
Good.
We are great. We're just getting ready for a football game. I think had you told us a month ago that Bills Dolphins was going to open the wild card round, it probably would have been the hottest matchup that people were talking about in this round. And all of a sudden, just the air has come out of this thing with what's going on down in Miami, that injury report. From the national perspective, what is the perception of this game?
That it's really a bye week. It's a bye week almost. I mean, it would be shocking if the Dolphins won. I don't see how they could win. Even if something, knock on wood, happened to Josh Allen, you'd still favor the Bills in the game. So I think this is a natural first round of the playoffs. Sometimes this happens. And now that there's 7 teams, you have 7 seeds that are making it, right? You could probably go back and find some other 7 seeds that were on fumes coming in. I just think there's some teams that get to the playoffs on fumes at the end. I mean, Seattle's a little bit of another one, probably better than Miami right now, but you'd be surprised if they were able to do anything against San Francisco. And so for the Bills, just take care of business, stay healthy, and get on to the next round, hopefully.
What are you hearing about Tua in general? The thought around the league about him, because here in Buffalo, I mean, I've covered Mitch Morse now here for the last couple of seasons, and he had gone 2 years without a concussion, had the one this year. Some of the fear that kind of comes back up with that whenever a player suffers that, especially an offensive lineman. And he said even, I think it was last week, that he was going to try to reach out to Tua after the season just to check on him and talk about his experience with everything. What is the thought process on what the future holds now for him, even beyond this week?
Yeah, so just as a player before the injuries, I think people were encouraged by how he was playing, but hadn't really changed their opinion a great deal. That, hey, they'd gotten these amazing receivers, and he was still going to have to show over time if he could hold up physically and how much of that he was actually driving, right? So I think the thought was earlier that he may, though, make it out and be their quarterback. But now how do you even put him on the field next season, possibly, right? Or how could you bank on that? And so I think they've really mismanaged the situation beyond that, because they lost a first-round pick in the tampering thing, traded another one for Bradley Chubb. I mean, is that putting their defense over the top? Didn't think so at the time. Don't think so now. So they're really in a bad situation. They started out a little bit like Philly. Philly had Jalen Hurts, who they're excited about. They weren't sure about, and then they had picks in case it went wrong. Right? They could do something else. And I think the Dolphins find themselves in a situation where I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to be back in the Tom Brady sweepstakes? Are they going to look at Derek Carr? I'm not sure, but I don't think they can bank on Tua. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. With all the health scares there, big picture for the Bills. What do you think the perception is around the league in terms of what this playoff run means this year, specifically for Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, and Brandon Beane?
So much was affected by the Damar Hamlin situation. I think once he was healthy and trending in the right direction, and it was just such a boost. I think there was initially a feeling of wow, look out for the Bills. And I think people still feel that, but I think as time goes on, the reality of having lost Von Miller is a big deal. And so, if you're in the NFC side, we'd be stamping that ticket, say you're going to the Super Bowl and take your chances. I feel like now when you talk about windows, last year was probably their best win, a great window, right?
Yeah.
They were the best team, I felt. This year, a lot of the time, I felt they were the best team. But to me, losing Von Miller throws it open a little more. I think if he was there, I would feel more confident, like, hey, look out, this is a team to beat. But I feel like now I like Cincinnati, a little bit, just where they're at. And you could make a case for all of these teams. So are they going to, if they don't make it through, I kind of understand. I know they're the window and legacies and all of that. I think this is a really good team. And as the Bills know better than anybody, it doesn't guarantee you championships. You have to take advantage of the opportunities when you're the best team. I felt like more for the Bills that was last year, and this year the margin for error is a little bit smaller because Cincinnati's elevated and Kansas City, like I said, Von Miller's hurt. So I think they got a good chance, but it's a tough road.
What do you think? You mentioned Cincinnati, obviously Kansas City. I feel like on any given Sunday between the three of those teams, it's just going to be fun football over the next month. Who do you project long-term with the quarterback situation, some of the, offensive talent built around those quarterbacks? Who projects as maybe the longest Super Bowl window in your eyes, or the most comfortable Super Bowl window?
Yeah. So to me, it's probably Kansas City, because I think through style of play for Patrick Mahomes, I think that's one thing. And you would also say of those three, Patrick Mahomes is probably most established as someone who's going to maintain this level of play for a long time. There's no question the talent of Josh Allen, and he's an incredible player and athlete and leader and the whole thing. But he runs the ball a lot. He takes a lot of hits. And we've seen in the second half of the career for guys like that, there's not really a guy like him, but Cam Newton ran a lot, was a big bodied player, was pretty good, not as good as Josh Allen, but physically he wore down the second half of his career. It wasn't any one injury. It wasn't like he just was running and got his knees caved in. That's not usually how it happens. The toll is taken over time. So I think that will be interesting to see. Is Josh Allen just so big and strong that none of that affects him later in his career? Burrow, with that organization, that's a potential question mark. And then he takes a lot of hits just in the pocket. I mean, he gets sacked a lot. So we'll see. I really like him, but I think Mahomes has proven. Mahomes plus Andy Reid, take away Tyreek Hill, change the offense, adaptability, probably style of play that's going to be with him for a long time.
Would losing Eric Bieniemy this offseason potentially change that view for you at all? You mentioned it. Andy Reid's still there, and Andy Reid is kind of the mastermind behind it all. But we saw Josh Allen this year have a new offensive coordinator for the first time since, he lost Brian Dable. So what is your stance on potentially if this is the year that Bieniemy maybe gets a head coaching job?
It wouldn't even occur to me as affecting anything. I think you concerned a little more with Buffalo because, Sean McDermott's such a great defensive coach. He's not going to go in and help as much as some other coach might, an offensive coach might on the offensive side of the ball. So you're a little bit more dependent on that. I think as long as Andy Reid's there, the track record goes back to Green Bay and Philly and running different styles of offenses with different types of quarterback and quarterbacks, even in Kansas City. Alex Smith, they were a playoff team. They won a lot of games. I've always felt like Andy Reid elevates your quarterback a couple wins almost, it feels like, right? Donovan McNabb was another one. I mean, he was a really good talent player. The minute he left, he was done, Yeah. And so I think Reid is such a differentiating coach that even if Eric Bieniemy is helping them, I don't think you could ever make the case that he's the key to the whole thing any more than Matt Nagy leaving or any of those other guys, affected it.
What are you hearing about Ken Dorsey? Because that's a really hot conversation among Bills fans right now. From the inside looking out, I think if I was a hiring coach, as good as a job as I think Dorsey's done, I think he connects with guys really well. I still think he's probably a year or two away from wanting to hand him the keys to the whole organization. What's the idea?
Yeah.
What's the thoughts about him?
Well, it's a great to even be having that discussion because when Brian Daboll left, we were all wondering, okay, is this going to be, a little bit different? Is Sean McDermott as a defensive coach going to grab the reins of the offense and it's going to get too conservative and all of that? Didn't happen. They were really good on offense. So I think that does reset him, reposition him as not somebody who could potentially be a liability in the absence of Daboll to someone who has prospects of his own. I probably agree with you that that another year of it, right? Just sort of like when Josh Allen had a great year, people were like, okay, let's see one more year of it, right? But you never know in these interactions and interviews how someone connects or what the connections are that could accelerate that. We see that happen. He doesn't seem to have he doesn't have the Sean McVay magic dust that just makes him hire you on trust, like, oh yeah, we're just going to get this guy. So maybe that's another reason for another year for him. But it's just great to see that he's even being considered that way, because it was potentially going to be a drop off from Daboll, who we've all seen has done a great job with the Giants.
Yeah, and it's always interesting, from the media perspective, because you do see fans criticizing his performance, and yet the Bills were among the top offenses in the league. They really didn't miss a step. But you mentioned something that I wanted to follow up on, as you said, connections. And one team that he's been linked to a little bit is the Carolina Panthers, and obviously they have Dan Morgan, someone that was in the Bills organization for a few seasons. How much does it help a coach when they have those previous relationships? And Morgan, I guess in his case, how much does it help that he knows a lot about Ken Dorsey, who he is as a coach and who he is as a person?
It really helps the team that's doing the hiring. Now, that doesn't mean that they think he's the greatest ever, right? You could know the downside of somebody too.
Sure.
I'm not saying that's the case at all, but I'll give you an example. Like, hey, Russell Wilson was with Dan Quinn. Okay, does Dan Quinn want to be with Russell Wilson in Denver again? Or does he like, I kind of know the downside of that too and doesn't want to do it. So I think it's great for the Panthers that they know. And if he has a high opinion of Ken Dorsey, then I think it really does probably move him a step ahead, because if he's trusted in the Panther organization, he can vouch, right? So I do think that's always helpful to have a connection of somebody that respects you, knows you, and can put a little capital on the line for you when it's needed.
I've been in this locker room for 5 years, like I mentioned, talked to pretty much every defensive player that's come through here, that's had a role in this defense, and all of them say the same things about Leslie Frazier. Micah Hyde is leading the charge for him to be a head coach, even though it'll mean losing him. I haven't heard any rumors about him being a candidate, getting any interviews. Do you feel like he's just going to be somebody that, just never gets that second crack at it?
It could be just because the owners don't know how the games are won and lost. And when you look at Leslie Frazier, he won 39% of his games with the Vikings, and Christian Ponder threw the most pass attempts during that time. Do you think that was a factor maybe in what his record was? Or what do you think anyone else's record would be with Christian Ponder, right?
Right.
Do you want to get the next Matt LaFleur, who can go pair with Aaron Rodgers and win 75% of his games? I mean, that's just the frustrating part about coaching in the NFL is everybody has to have that guy. And so many of these coaches get their opportunity, and then you're paired with Josh Rosen and you're like, yeah, Wilkes sucks. No, maybe Wilkes doesn't suck. Maybe Josh Rosen never played again in the NFL. And for Leslie Frazier, that's a huge part of it. He hit it at the wrong time. Kevin O'Connell goes to Minnesota. Not that Kirk Cousins is amazing, but he's a legitimate starting quarterback in the league who's going to win half the games if you're just representative on defense. Right. So I think people don't understand and have a hard time quantifying what a Leslie Frazier brings to it. They probably look at that Minnesota record. God, it wasn't very good. And they don't really know how the games were won and lost.
Yeah, and that's fair. And, Buffalo's defense, so since Frazier's been here, obviously has been solid. You could almost argue, though, to the counterpoint that sometimes it's a blessing in disguise when for him not to have been hired. Because you look at Houston last year. He was a candidate. He was a finalist there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure there was anything he could have done this year with that roster where we would be sitting here saying he's coming back for year two. And I'm hoping that in the case of Frazier, that an opportunity when it arises, there are pieces in place for him to truly show, because you mentioned it, Christian Ponder, he wouldn't have been able to do anything with Davis Mills in that roster this year. So there's something to be said too about maybe, a blessing in disguise that he wasn't picked there, and maybe he'll get another opportunity and there will be some pieces where he can finally prove what he can do.
And it's a blessing for the Bills because, I mean, they're better with him. I just think that I like the second-time head coach, unless someone just has a fatal personality flaw or, there's just something about him that you just think they're incompetent. But I think Leslie Frazier's been competent and better than that everywhere he's been. And I like the fact that I like it when you get a second chance after having a time in between. The flip side of that would be like, Adam Gase got too quickly into the Jets job, right? If he had been able to reset, take 4 or 5 years, think about it all, be humbled a little bit, maybe he goes into his next opportunity a wiser, readier guy, right? And I think for somebody like Leslie Frazier, who's got such a history in the league, now he's had, I mean, how many years has it been? Almost 10 years since he was the coach. You would think that, and he's been in different places. You'd think he would be a great one to come in. I don't know of any downside with him. I don't, he'd be the type of guy that I'd probably be looking for. I do think you have to, there is a debate internally with your team to decide, okay, do we want the offensive coach or defensive? There's something to that. What if we hire a defensive coach, then we're struggling to get offensive coordinators and they leave? There's something to that you have to take into account and weigh that against who else you can get. But, if you look at the long-term success in the league, a lot of times you have either a defensive coach or a head coach who is not primarily a play caller, and then they build up the defensive side of the ball, which makes it easier to win. And that's Mike Tomlin, that's Pete Carroll. I did a story on it before the season. There's a handful of guys that have done that, and then you get other organizations where you've got the good quarterback and they never get it right around them because they don't have a coach who leads the team. I think that's one of the nice things that McDermott has done. He's got someone who calls the defense, and while Sean's very involved, he's trying to coach the team and set it up so that Josh Allen has a top 10 defense, right? And then it's much easier to win the games. Tom Brady all those years had it, right? His coach wasn't the master play caller on offense. His coach was setting the culture for the team and having a defense and special teams that let him win championships with a great quarterback. So I would take that into account when building a team too.
Well said. I'm going to get you out of here. But before I do, one little quick fun question. The Bills are pretty much locked down, for the foreseeable future, all the important pieces in place. The rest of the division, not so much. A lot of questions about all three teams as we look into the offseason, depending on what happens with the Dolphins. I were to hand you the keys to one of those franchises to take over and run into the future. What's best set up now, best set up for future success? Who would you think you'd want to take in that situation?
Wow, that's a really great question. I don't like Miami with the owner. Okay. So that probably takes me out of Miami. I do like New England with the ownership and the tradition there. And I may do that. I think that they really took a step back offensively with the coaching setup. That was just doomed from the start. And so I thought that was a pretty good job of Robert Kraft to make them put it on paper that we're getting the coordinator and we're doing all this stuff. They put out a release. So, they've had their ups and downs, but in the last few years, they're still roughly a 500 team. That's been their floor, right? With quarterback uncertainty, really screwing up the offensive coaching staff. Some of the rest of it has fallen off. I think the coaching on the defense and special teams, Belichick's probably been spread thin. They've been a team now that's made some of the dumb errors or had the special teams meltdowns, but still are right there around 500 with a good defense. So I think there's something to be said for that, as opposed to banking on whatever the Jets are trying to figure out, whatever the Dolphins are trying to figure out. The ownership component there, is inconsistent.
Mike Sando from The Athletic. Let everybody know where they can find your work before we let you get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. At The Athletic. All my columns are there, and you can find me on Twitter at Sando NFL, and you can find the GM Football Podcast on the Athletic Football Show feed. They're usually posts, I think, every Thursday.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you, my friend. Probably see you, if not sometime during the playoffs in Indianapolis.
What are you talking about? You're not going to the Super Bowl covering the Bills? I'll be there.
Yes, exactly. There you go.
Bills are going to be there. We'll be there. Don't. Yeah, you have little faith. No. Yeah. All right. We'll see you there. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Mike Sando. Awesome stuff from him. We'll bring in producer AJ into the show, fixing his lighting setup in the background. Always an adventure. What's up, buddy? What do you got bringing in for us here?
Yeah. So the thing I want to ask you guys, since I was listening to Mike Sando from The Athletic, who did a really good job speaking. For you guys, for both of you, I don't care who goes first, who's the scarier, team for the Bills looking past the Dolphins? Is it Cincy at home? From what you saw from that little bit that we played, I know it wasn't a big sample size, or is it the Chiefs at a neutral location? In Atlanta, actually. So what's a scarier team for you guys?
For me, it's the Bengals. I look at that team. They're 3 deep at wide receiver. The quarterback is playing lights out for the team. I know that Buffalo would be hosting the game, but strong defensive ends, very small sample size. I'm not looking anything into that 7-3 game. I just like the way that their roster has been built and constructed. I like the way that they attack the offensive line in the offseason. And yes, they did lose one of their valuable tackles, obviously, late in the season. But I like that roster. I look at the Chiefs, and listen, if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be shocked because of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, two guys that Mike referred to in our interview. But I also look at that roster as being flawed in terms of some teams can hang with them. You go to overtime against the Houston Texans. You go to overtime against the Tennessee Titans when they're playing their rookie quarterback. You lose to the Indianapolis Colts. You play 2 close games against the Denver Broncos team that was not very good this year. They still ended up winning the most games in the conference, winning the number 1 seed. They took care of business. But they also let some teams that did not have anywhere near as much talent hang around with them. And I think that the Bills could definitely beat them for a second time this season. I think the Bengals could beat them for a second time this season. But of those 2 teams, I think the Bengals give me I have more questions about whether or not the Bills can continue, go toe-to-toe with the Bengals over 4 quarters.
I'm going to push back a little bit. And while I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I could probably find my way to agreeing with Cincinnati being the more difficult situation because you're so familiar with Kansas City. But I think the familiarity that Mahomes has against McDermott helps him more than it'll help Joe Burrow. Like everything went perfect for Burrow for a drive and a half against the Bills, right? Like they were moving up and down the field. There was no time for adjustment. There was no time for McDermott and Frazier to come together and figure out something different to throw at him. And you mentioned losing Lyle Collins, the right tackle. I think it's even more important and more detrimental to Joe Burrow that they've also now lost Alex Kappa. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. He's definitely going to be out for this week's game. And then you look into next week, he was rolling around on one of those mobile carts at practice. And if he doesn't play, we're talking about potentially return of the sack for the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. Defensively, DJ Reader's a really good player. But I also like Mitch Morse having a history with him. He's played him going back to his days in Kansas City. I fear Chris Jones more than I fear DJ Reader on a consistent play-by-play basis, and he's finding his mojo again late in the season. For as much as that Kansas City Chiefs team has been a little bit lackluster in December and in January, Chris Jones has been anything but. He's been a force. He's been that wrecking ball that he's been over the course of his career, and I still think that's going to be a big problem, and you haven't beaten them. That's the thing to me. Like, you beat him in the regular season, you haven't beat him in the playoffs. So I still think Kansas City Chiefs are at that spot. But you don't have to go back to Arrowhead. And I think if push came to shove and I had to make a definitive call, I'd probably go with the Bengals, with Ryan, because of that. You're going to play them in a neutral site.
Yeah, you guys are both spot on. I think that, they're both great teams, but with the circumstances of this year, the Bills hosting the Bengals at home, I think that gives the edge to the Bills, obviously playing in front of the fans. And then when you look at the neutral site game, that's, if you ever ask for a perfect, game for the Bills and Chiefs to see who's the better team and what the Bills have learned from last year, it's doing it in a neutral site, in a dome where, 2 teams are both pretty much healthy. I know Von's out and Hyde might be back that game, but you've got 2 teams that are very healthy in a dome, and the Bills can right their wrongs from the last few years. And hopefully, if they move on from the Dolphins and Bengals and get to that point, the Bills put everything out there and do it in a neutral location and get the job done.
Yeah,
indeed. All right, what else you got for us, AJ? Anything else before we get to keys and predictions?
Yeah, I'll just touch on the Deion Dawkins article. I just really
you've been chomping at the bit to get this Deion Dawkins article in the show, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just really like the article. If you guys haven't seen it, I'm sure most of people on Twitter have read it. I think it just really shows the amount of how it's about football, but this was something they've never seen before. Dawkins just does a really good job of speaking on how there's a difference between football and life, and how all the players and teammates have realized that throughout the season. And with the Hamlin stuff, it's just a really interesting read, and I enjoyed it.
I thought point number 3 was on his. He wrote up 8 graphs, and I thought that the number 3 one was interesting. He had said that Bengals game would have been a shootout. I swear, it had a big fight feel to me. Like, you had these 2 heavyweight boxers about to trade crazy punches. Actually, the truth is we don't like them. That's how we felt going into that matchup. That's how we feel about any matchup in our conference with any team who's standing in the way of our goal. So it really was this statement type game waiting to happen, and their fans were jacked up for it. I'll give them credit for that. The weather was right. The sky was dark. But with everyone's cell phones all lit, they had Welcome to the Jungle on blast. This is weird to say after what happened, but the energy at the start of that game was perfect. It was out of a movie. And I do agree. It did feel like that. And I know a lot of people have been talking about the Bengals, like maybe running away with that one, but I felt like it was going to be a back and forth type of game. Like I thought the Bills moved the ball just fine in that first drive. They just ended up not converting in the red zone. They've kind of figured things out in previous games against really good defenses in that department. So I was excited to see how that played out. Obviously, what happened after that. I mean, this was a very confident Deion Dawkins in this letter, Ryan. I don't know if you read it, but he said if anybody over the next 4 weeks wants to, around and find out, the Bills are ready to handle some business. So very confident word, maybe even some bulletin board material for some teams. Because
exactly what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just, pretty much kind of came out and gave bulletin board material to every team they could play along the way. We're the best team, and we're going to, have a chance to kind of prove it. But going to the Bengals part, that third bulleted point, a lot of people, Bills fans and Bengals fans alike, some, you're right, we're like, oh, the Bengals are just moving with ease. Listen, we've seen this before. Buffalo's defense, it's bend but not break. They make adjustments after 1 or 2 drives. They figure things out. People forget that Bengals game the week before, they went up 22-0 against New England, and then they got figured out, and they couldn't put up points in that matchup. I think that it would have been a very close game. So anyone making opinions that it could have been a runaway for the Bengals or the thinking that the Bills are going to run away with it, no, I think it could have been a very close game. And in terms of Deion saying we don't like them, there was bulletin board material going into that game. There was disrespect for the Bills linebackers, talking about how they weren't as good as the Ravens linebackers. And, they're good, but they're not the Ravens. And I want to say it was Tyler Boyd who said something as well going into that game. So, yeah, a little bit of talk beforehand. If they do meet up here in the playoffs next weekend, yeah, I think that'll be a fun game to watch. The atmosphere, at Highmark Stadium will be off the charts. So, can't look ahead past this weekend, obviously, but some potential exciting matchups to come.
All right, get over to valuehomecenters.com right now. They have their latest advertisement up on the site. Save even more with the Best Rewards program. New to Best Rewards, it's Value Home Centers loyalty program. You sign up in-store or online today, and you gain access to exclusive deals like the ones on the ad itself. And as always, you can sign up for their text program. It is the best thing going. You text VALU to 8062 and get yourself all set up. All right. Speaking of Value Home Centers, keys to the game, boys. We'll start with Ryan. We'll go AJ, and then I'll finish this up.
Yeah. Limit turnovers. That's the only way I think they can lose this game. If the Bills don't have multiple turnovers, they win and they cruise to an easy victory. If they turn over the ball deep in their own end, anything can happen at that point, but protect the football. That's my key. Pretty short and sweet and to the point.
Matt, I hope I'm not taking yours, but my key to the game is just staying healthy. The Bills have had so many injuries throughout the season, and going into a game where you're going against a team that's, battered by injuries and dealing with a lot of adversity over there, it's very important that this team gets off the field healthy. The secondary, they can't lose Poyer. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that they can't lose if they want to make a run at this thing. So key to the game, getting healthy and getting another game next week in Buffalo.
Shout out to Matt Milano, first team All-Pro selection today. We didn't get into that on the show, but he's rewarded for his best season to date. He called it that today when we got a chance to talk to him. He's the only Bills player that got the first team nod, and he kind of this bakes into my key to the game. Stephon Diggs, second team All-Pro with franchise and career record 11 touchdown catches this year. Did you ever watch the movie Karate Kid, AJ? You're a little young. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah, I watched it, but not great memory of it. But I watched it before, yeah.
That's okay. There was Sensei John Kreese. He was the head of Cobra Kai in the first movie, and he had a famous line to Lawrence, and he said, "No mercy." And I think the Bills have to show no mercy to Skylar Thompson on Sunday. I don't think that they will, but I think they have to contain him in the pocket. Their edge rushers have to do a good job of setting the edge, because he is going to want to get out. He is pretty athletic. He can get out. If you've watched him play, he can kind of get out and try to make some plays happen. I don't think that he's really diagnosing the defense well enough, even in those situations, to make the kind of plays he needs to make. It's almost like you're watching him and you're almost like he probably watches a lot of Josh Allen highlights and he's trying to kind of, do his best version of that. But I think if you can keep him in the pocket, make him operate there, let your interior pass rush try to do some damage. Liam Eichenberg potentially out in this game. He's doubtful. You have Shell and Armstead both questionable. You tee off on Skylar Thompson. You make him throw the ball, try to push the ball down the field to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You turn the ball over and you win the game.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I think that I would be surprised, Matt, if this game is close at the end of the game on Sunday.
Prediction time, Ryan. I'm going to start you. We have not looked at each other's predictions, our score predictions every week. I'm going to let you start it off. What do you got?
I'll be surprised if we're close to another because I have the Bills winning this one big time. Bills 48, Dolphins 13. 40 burger.
Say that again. What's the score?
Yeah, Bills 48, Dolphins 13. I think that there's going to be multiple turnovers by Miami, set up some short and easy scores for the Bills, maybe even a defensive touchdown or two. I just don't see this one being close.
We are in lockstep, my brother. 42-14. I have the Bills winning. And I had to bring up my email because I send in my email prediction every week to Channel 4. And I got to make sure that it's the same on. But as much as things change, I know we were a little bit out of sync a couple weeks ago for the Bengals game, but we're right back at it. I feel like sitting next to each other in the press box last week brought us, that kinship back closer together. So I just think from a defensive perspective, the Dolphins could do a really good job figuring out a way to run the ball, right? But then they got to execute in the red zone. The Bills are one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL. That's what they kind of built that defense on. Let you kind of drive down the field, shore things up against their own goal line. Skylar Thompson's probably going to make some mistakes down there unless they're able to kind of just run it down the Bills' throat. I don't see that happening. I think Daquan Jones is going to be a big player to watch in this game. Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds alike, Jordan Poyer. I think the Bills get it done 42-14. AJ, what do you got?
Yeah, since this is one of my last shows, I don't have a prediction for this game, but I'll predict one game in the future if it happens. I'm going to go Bills 34, Niners 17. Bills win the Super Bowl. Parade in Buffalo.
Wow. Look at this. AJ with the he got out the crystal ball and he's looking weeks and weeks down the line. So if the Dolphins win this week, can we have you come on next week and just kind of sheepishly say, "I'm sorry, guys. I said it was one of my last shows. I either sit here with my head down or just not show up." I like it. Listen, go out with a bold take. That's how we do it. I love it.
Bills
final
Niners.
thought, Ryan.
All right. Yeah, final thought. Can't wait to be at Highmark Stadium on Sunday, Bills Mafia. I know that atmosphere is going to be special. No doubt that this could be the start of something special for this Bills team.
If you want to start something special for your weekend, head over to Tops, get over to the Carryout Cafe. Right now, they got you hooked up for game day, your tailgate, whatever you need. Hot to go, fresh, large cheese and pepperoni pizzas, $14. The jumbo chicken wing, 10 count, $14. The Tops legendary breakfast pizza. Get yourself a large for $20. Pizza or taco log, 6 count, $7.69. Baby back rib sections, $5.99 a pound. Plus subs, sandwiches, wraps, apps, sides, and so much more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone for the complete menu of ready-to-enjoy fan favorites. AJ Sabalski, did I do it right?
Yep.
Wow, setting you out with a bang, my friend. Ryan Talbot. AJ, thank you for everything this season, man.
Yes, thank you.
You are the longest tenured intern. You went a little bit past your end date. We've had awesome interns. Sarah Holland, who was on with us last year. You've carried on the tradition. You've done a great job. We're really appreciative of your contributions and all your work, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. Hope to stay in touch. And it's been a really fun season. The chat, thank you guys. It's been fun reading all the shenanigans on there. So reading that, listening to football, it's not a job for me. It's a fun time.
Sorry, Ryan. I didn't want to.
No, absolutely not. No, I just.
I led Ryan into that really awkward silence.
That awkward silence.
Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
No, yeah. Thank you for everything. Pleasure to meet your family out at Wingnuts at our first event. You've done a great job for us. Can't say enough good things.
Are you going to come out to Wingnuts though? In a couple weeks?
100%.
All right. Good. Check that out. The event is up over on Facebook. Put a quick plug in for that. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We're back. Return engagement to Wingnuts. Hopefully for all of your sakes, Bills Mafia in general, it is a AFC title game preview show Friday, January 27th in Wingnuts. We're going to meet there at about 6 p.m. We'll do the show live at 7 p.m. Excited about that and everything else this weekend covering this game. We'll see you on Sunday. Take care, everybody.